Is there anybody out there?
The lights in the night sky. Skywatchers. We're watching. We're watching.
Did you see that?
Here on EngageLife.fm.
Welcome, everybody. This is your host, Debra Jayne East with Skywatchers, and we're watching the skies in North Carolina and all over the globe. I'm excited to have a very special guest here with me this evening, and I want to tell you a little bit about him. And, well, it's not a little bit. He has quite an extensive history here. His name is Ricky Butterfass, and he has been a UFO researcher for many years and is a core member of CSETI. Ricky has had contact experience since he was 10 years old in 1958, and also an onboard experience in 1973 as well. He is one of the co-authors of the book Paths to Contact, True Stories from the Contact Underground. He is also an associate producer and cast member in the Sirius documentary. He is a volunteer at the Orion Project, which is an organization created to transform the current energy, environmental, and social crisis in our world. And he has also been with Dr. Stephen Greer since 1991 and is also one of the core CE5 team members. He also helped set up CE5 teams, and he has did workshops in Pittsburgh, Los Angeles, Auckland, and New Zealand. Welcome, Ricky. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today on Earth Day, and I'm looking forward to your questions and any questions that your listeners might have also.
Well, we have a lot of stuff to cover, so I just want to jump right in. I just recently attended a UFO conference in Eureka Springs, which I was talking to you about earlier, and I met a lot of people from all walks of life. And the one thing I noticed is they were young, they were old, just all different ages, and they all had experiences with UFOs in some way, shape, or form. What happened to you, Ricky, in your life that sort of opened the door to this and got you interested?
Well, I was pretty much interested in anything that flew when I was a child. And when I was, 6 or 7 years old, every time an airplane would fly over Denver, I'd run outside and watch it fly over. I didn't care if, I was at the dinner table or not. I'd go up there and just say, yeah, man, I want to be on one of those. So I got my pilot license at age of 18. And then at the age of 10, I had an experience, a UFO encounter. It happened here at my home where I grew up in Denver, Colorado, actually in the suburbs in Westminster, Colorado. And it was, like I said, 1958. We just moved into the house. And my dad had planted the front yard with grass and said, kids don't play on the lawn until it starts coming up, and he didn't want us to track up the seeding. And so one night I was asleep in bed in my bedroom, I had my pajamas on, and my mom had pulled down the shade on the window. And all of a sudden I woke up, and I don't know if it was sirens going off or what it was. But I woke up and I looked up at the window and I saw what looked like little white butterflies. And I says, well, that was strange. So I got up and I pulled the curtains back, and I could see on the shade something that was behind the shade. So I pulled the shade back and stuck my head out. And I looked out the window, and over the skies of Denver, all these searchlights were going back and forth. And I could see these white disc-shaped objects flying across the sky, and these searchlights were trying to lock onto them. And this was, like I said, 1958, and that was about 11 years after the Roswell incident. So I thought that was, I watched this go on for a little bit, and then the hall light came on. And I heard my folks get up out of bed, and I saw my dad walk down the hall, and my mom, and then my little sister, And I said, I didn't know where they're going. I says, wait for me. So I jumped up out of bed and followed them out the front door. And we walked out the front door, and then my dad walked on the grass, the newly planted lawn. And I said, Daddy, you said don't walk on the grass. You're walking on the grass. And I grabbed his...
We always mention things that as children, don't we?
Yeah, so I looked up at him, and I could see his eyes were wide open, but he was still asleep. He was like he was sleepwalking. And, that kind of was strange. At 10 years old, I didn't know what to think about that. And then I heard a voice next to me said, "Don't be afraid, Ricky. It's all right." And I turned, and I saw this guy. I was about 5 feet tall at 10 years old. My dad was 6 feet. And I came up to my dad's chest, and then I looked at this guy, and he was about 8 to 10 feet tall, and I came up to about his waist. And he was dressed...
Oh, my gosh.
He was a big guy, and I never saw anybody that tall, and he was dressed in sort of like a... I could say a tunic, sort of, or like a kilt, something like that. It was white, and it had sort of a gold hem border on it, and it was, and he seemed to have long hair, and he looked, he looked human for sure, but only big, a giant. And I thought that was pretty amazing. I was just taking this all in. And then I looked around, and I saw that everyone in the whole neighborhood was standing out in their front yard, all lined up like we were, on both sides of the street, on both sides of the block, because I live in a housing project. And then I looked down the street, and I saw two more of these tall guys walking up the street in their white tunics or whatever you want to call it, kilts. And I saw in between the two a little guy that was only about my size, and he looked human too. But only he had a longer robe type of thing on, kind of like a toga, or maybe a gown, or what are you going to call it, dress or whatever, which I hadn't seen before. And they walked up the street, and they got to my house, and I could see the smaller guy, my size, had something in his hands, like a little, I don't know, like a notebook or something, or a Palm Pilot, or somebody would call it like a iPhone or something these days, but that's about the size of it. And the big tall guy that was standing next to me pushed me forward and says, "It's okay, don't worry. Don't be afraid." And the little guy says, yeah, he looked at his little Palm Pilot thing and said, "Oh yeah, we already know all about him. Okay, we're finished here. Everybody can go back inside their houses now." And so that was the end of it. And so we just turned around and walked back inside the house. I got back into bed, and the lights were turned out, and I went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning, and I ran out into the kitchen and says, Mom, where are you? She says, "Well, I'm out here in the kitchen." I says, "Where's Daddy?" She says, "Well, he's at work." So where's Rhonda? She's sleeping. I said, "What were the spacemen doing here last night? Why were they here?" She says, "Oh, honey, there wasn't any spacemen. That was just a dream." So I took it as it was a dream. It was real to me, but my mom didn't have any recollection. She didn't remember it, and nobody else did in the whole neighborhood, because they were still sleeping, and I was the only one that seemed to be awake in the whole neighborhood.
But you describe it just like it was yesterday. I mean, you have a great memory. That was very vivid.
Well, I do remember it. It's like I live it over every time I say the story. So my interest in it, just everything, I started reading science fiction, but Andre Norton, some of the science fiction books and about spacemen and that sort of thing. And then my dad was showing me, in those days, they'd make headline news in the newspapers, and my dad was showing me the headlines in the newspapers and, artist conception of these flying discs, flying saucers. And that was pretty much in the media a lot. But since those stories have been just suppressed by the mainstream media, it's all been controlled and covered up now for reasons we can get into in a minute. But like I said, I was just interested in airplanes, anything that fly, from kites. I know everything from Benjamin Franklin's kite and discovery of electricity to the Saturn V that took us to the moon. And I got involved with Carl Sagan's Planetary Society. That was in our early days. We were doing the SETI project, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. That's
you actually got to meet him in person, didn't you?
I met him in 1987. I don't know if you recall the harmonic convergence. That was going on at the same time the Millennius Committee and astronomers were meeting on the Big Island in Hawaii. And they were planning for the next millennium. And so they were in Kona. And then they had a big, went up to Volcano House on top of Kilauea. And so anyway, that's where I met Dr. Sagan. Since I was really interested in this, I decided to invent a flying saucer and all things, because I was really into the whole space program and everything. Matter of fact, my degree's in aerospace science, aerospace technology, and as I said, I got my pilot license at 18. So everything with flying I was into, especially the space program. As a member of the National Space Institute, now it's the National Space Society, I think, and anything that had to do with space I was involved with. But so I had looked at an article that was in, I think it was in Mechanics Illustrated, called Ionocraft, and it was about these ion-propelled lift devices that a guy named Deshevsky came up with, where he ionized the atmosphere, and then he had a grid system, kind of looked like bed springs, and that was the cathode, the negative charge, and the ionosphere was, or positive charge, and then these emitters put out static electricity, negative ions, and it would cause the air to be attracted to that other grid. The electrons would stay, but the air mass would keep going, so it actually lifted. You can do this on the internet. You can search this. But so I was going to take that idea and put it into a design theory for a flying saucer. I got my senior class award in high school for this work I'd done on it, and got a scholarship to electronics school. But I went to Metro State College, Metro State University here in Denver now, and got a degree in aerospace tech, and then I was recruited by the Navy, went into the Navy. But I kept on doing independent study on my design for a 3-stage fusion electromagnetic ramjet. It's basically a jet engine, but it works on electricity, and it uses hydrogen, free hydrogen in the atmosphere and in space for propulsion. Uses a combustion system, and also uses metallic hydrides infused with hydrogen pellets, kind of like think of a rock in a snowball with liquid hydrogen, and inject that in a gas flow, and then we have lasers on the outside of the craft that focuses on that, and it detonates, and it propels it to thermonuclear fusion. Anyway, I came up with this design theory and gave it to Carl Sagan and sent it to Ronald Reagan, and it got a classification from NASA, but when I'd inquire about it or try to make comment, I'd send in my letters, but I wasn't getting any reply because I didn't have a classification clearance. So they couldn't talk to me about my own stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, all right. So in the meantime...
Did it get attention? Did it get attention from some organization or something? Because it certainly sounds like it would have been a feasible project.
Right. It was a feasible project. I got a corporate letter of accommodation from the chairman of the board of United Airlines, Richard Ferris, when I brought it to him. And then they got me to go to their maintenance base where they had a whole engineering department in those days. And they also started a education fund, a scholarship program. And I was going to try to go to the University of Colorado and go to their grad school in aeronautical engineering, but I was too far ahead of those guys. They couldn't understand what was going on. So they didn't accept my application, but the next semester, the next year, they started their space studies programs there now, and that's where a lot of the astronauts come out of there. But and Sagan gave me the brush off. But I met Dr. Brian O'Leary, who was deputy director under Carl Sagan on the Viking Mars project, and the Viking lander. It flew over Mars and it photographed the topography, and that's when they, on some of those flybys, when they discovered the face on Mars. And, excuse me.
I remember that.
Yeah, and so Brian O'Leary was deputy director under Carl Sagan on the Viking project, and Brian was also an Apollo astronaut. He was going to go up. He was an Apollo Mars astronaut. He was picked to go to Mars on the Mars mission, and the whole thing from Viking was to find a landing area on Mars. But President Nixon, shut down Apollo. The Apollo Mars project got canceled. And while I was in flight school in the Navy, the whole reason I joined the Navy was to try to get into the astronaut corps and go to Mars myself. So that was my aspiration. But, after Nixon cut the project and the war in Vietnam was just for the oil in the Mekong Delta, I just became a conscientious objector, and I resigned from flight school. But after meeting Brian O'Leary, who got the brush off from Sagan too, because Dr. Mark Carlotto came in with 3 different passes, 3 different sun angles that showed that there was an anomaly possibility with this face on Mars. And of course, people have heard from Hoagland about the pyramids and the whole thing that Hoagland wrote up. But Dr. Mark Carlotto was part of the imaging team, and his team would get these mosaics. The Viking would fly over Mars, and they would take photographs, aerial photographs, and they'd lay them together and make a mosaic. But he'd get 3 different. They get 3 different shots of it, so they get different sun angles, and then they'd be able to, from the position of the sun and the different angles, they could get elevations. And then his team, Dr. Carlotto's team, would do topographical maps for elevation, and topography, and they would make the globes too. So Dr. O'Leary took the data because he was deputy director and Carlotto reported to him. He went ahead and did some calculations, some logarithms that showed that a possible anomaly, and then he took his data and his calculations to Dr. Sagan, but Sagan said it had already been determined by JPL and NASA upper management that it was just light and shadow and it was nothing there at all, when in actuality it was really an artifact on Mars. So
have you saw the latest picture from Mars, by the way, that I think it's a flash picture on the horizon from the Mars rover, and I just read yesterday that NASA said it was a reflection from a rock.
Yeah, they said it was a cosmic ray or a light reflection, but they're going to do that, and we've had people within the Disclosure Project, which I'm a member of, that have come forward that were at JPL that were involved in the cover-ups. They airbrush that stuff out, and they already have a time delay now of about 30 minutes since the Challenger disaster, but it's all been covered up, and we've had guys inside NASA that come forward, some other astronauts that have come forward and said what they've seen, and this Dr. Edgar Mitchell is for one, and also
Gordon Cooper.
Yeah, Gordon Cooper. He's passed on, but he went before the United Nations and brought that out and made it public. But a lot of them there are threatened with their pensions and their families, and and they took an oath for national security to keep this covered up. But some of those in the Disclosure Project have now come forward, and you can find out about all this at SiriusDisclosure.org or .com, SIRIUS disclosure.com, and you can go there. That's Dr. Greer's site, but it's a one-stop site that you can do all the things that we've done, from CSETI, Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, to the Disclosure Project, and there's links to the Orion Project too, and all of it's there. Video, photos, and the Sirius movie can be accessed there. So a lot of that data is already there, and all these witnesses that Dr. Greer's got 37 hours of witness testimony, that a lot of it's been posted there that he's released since we did the Sirius movie, which actually premiered a year ago today. This is the first year anniversary of the Sirius documentary movie today. So
I know it doesn't seem like a year.
I know it. I couldn't believe that I'd walk down the red carpet in Hollywood in a movie, but I did it like last year. It kind of blows me away, but things like that just sort of happen. But anyway, so that's how I got involved, and after meeting Dr. Greer in 1990, or not Dr. Greer, but Dr. O'Leary in 1990, I told him about how Sagan gave me the brush off like he'd done him. And are you there still?
Yes.
Okay. My screensaver came on. I just want to make sure. So anyway, I met Dr. O'Leary, and I told him, hey, yeah, Sagan gave me the brush off, and I took his workshop, and I handed him my paper, and he said, well, we have just formed the International Association for New Science. Myself, Dr. Murray Albertson, who is Vice President Research and Development at Colorado State University, and also the chairman of the engineering department there. And he's also one of the founders of the Peace Corps. He just passed away a couple of years ago, and as did Dr. O'Leary. But he said, listen, why don't you send this paper into Dr. Albertson, and then if he approves it, you can give an international presentation at our next forum. So I did, and Dr. Albertson approved my paper, three-stage fusion electromagnetic ramjet interstellar drive unit, which was my design theory for a flying saucer, actually an alien reproduction vehicle, if you will, and it was modeled on all the performance characteristics of the classic flying saucer. So I got approved. I gave my presentation in the morning at Colorado State University, where we had this forum, and people from all over the world in all the sciences and different disciplines were given their data making speeches. So that afternoon, I looked at who the lineup was, and I saw Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, the CE5 initiative by Dr. Stephen Greer, MD. So I went to that presentation. Hey, this sounds right on. So I walked in there and listened to Dr. Greer give his presentation, which he showed video from his Gulf Breeze experience, where they vectored in 4 ET craft on the beach, and it was filmed by some guys from MUFON, and he had 3 independent films that backed up his position and what he had taken, and how it was human-initiated contact, close encounters of the fifth kind, which is CE5. That's what we're really doing, and it uses a method of contact with coherent thought sequencing in a meditative state, remote viewing, which is another way of a scientific way of saying astral projection, and remote vectoring, which is giving a mental visual picture of where we are out in the field on site and invite the ETs to come in. That's what we do. The ETs know it, and they come in and interact with it. There's 2 limiting factors to a CE5. Number 1 is what your intention is. If your intention is just to, get a position for advanced technologies, and become the next Carnegie or the next Henry Ford for ET technology, I don't know if that's probably a good enough intent for ETs to come and visit you, nor would it be the correct intent to say, I would like to have them come in and do spins and rolls and just to satisfy my curiosity, like watching
entertainment for a birthday party or something.
like watching the dolphins do tricks at SeaWorld. I doubt if ETs are going to come thousands of light years through space and time to interact with you there, or like have a tailgate party where you're drinking beers and cooking brats on your barbecue. I doubt if they're going to come in and interact with you there. But our intent is to establish peaceful diplomatic relations with the extraterrestrials, all of them visiting Earth. We've done that. We have been successful, and we've been doing that now since the first training that I was involved with in 1993. So, and for the last, the next training's, like I said, in April 27th outside of Tucson, Arizona. So for 21 years now, we've established this rapport with the ETs, that all of them, and we don't discriminate against any of them. They're all involved in this project. And people, I guess that's pretty much where I'm at now. If you got questions, I probably should let you say something here. But
well, it's been fascinating. I've interviewed a lot of the CE5 groups, and I hate to have favorites, but CE5 San Diego with Peter Chan and a lot of those people that trained with Costa McCree. They are extremely intelligent, very dedicated, and their work, I think, is totally relevant to disclosure. So I'm very excited about that. But we're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll be back with our guest, Ricky Butterfass.
You have been listening to Skywatchers with Debra Jayne East. Contact us, skywatchersfacebook.com, or Alien Chronicles for more information.
Something strange was happening in Lilydale, New York. Marina Jacobs went there to search for the one true man that she loved. Too bad he wasn't human. This is author Debra Jayne East. My paranormal romance book, Radiance: Love After Death, is available on Amazon worldwide and modernlovebooks.com. True love is not just for the living.
This is Rachel Love, founder of Starseed Spiritual Alliance, reminding you that you are not alone in this universe. Join us on the web, starseedspiritual.us, or on Facebook. This is Rachel Love reminding you to awaken your gifts. Open your eyes.
When someone asks you what you're doing today, tell them you're living life and having fun on Engage Life Radio. Call in and talk to our hosts about just about anything you can imagine and have a good time doing it. Stay tuned for more fun on Engage Life Radio.
Is there anybody out there?
The lights in the night sky. Skywatchers. We're watching. We're watching.
Did you see that?
Here on EngageLife.fm.
Welcome back to Skywatchers and our guest Ricky Butterfass, and we're talking about CE5 and a lot of the groups, other projects and things, the Orion project that Stephen Greer, helped to get started and that you are a part of. Can you tell me what's on the forefront of clean energy right now? Are there any new things that have caught your interest that, might be good for us to know about?
Well, first of all, we haven't needed any oil, coal, gas, or any carbon-based fuels or nuclear fuel since Nikola Tesla. And that's been over 100 years ago. And Tesla's technology that he found and discovered was the scalar wave energy technology. And here in Colorado Springs, he had constructed his Tesla coil and erected a tower and was able to collect free energy from the upper atmosphere and transmit this energy back to the local power station in Colorado Springs. But there was so much energy that he was able to bring in over unity energy. That means more energy in than he put out to get this energy, that it actually overloaded the local power station and burned out their dynamo there. But the problem was that J.P. Morgan, Chase Manhattan Bank now, and Thomas Edison and Westinghouse all knew that his technology would put them out of business. So what they did is they discredited Tesla, and then Chase actually bankrolled Edison and his dynamo. And the reason is that J.P. Morgan, wanted to get paid for his investment for every second, every minute, every hour, every day, 365, 24/7, 365. That's why we have 60 cycles or 60 hertz on our energy feeds now, because it runs a time meter, and everybody's on a timer now, so we're paying for every second. Simply start.
And we've been in debt ever since, haven't we?
We have been there. The thing about it is, now Tesla's scalar wave, and I do have a site that I can give to you about that proves that his scalar wave technology is that it's over unity, and it's actually, you can get a demonstration kit. This professor in Germany is the one who's come up with this kit, but and I can email to you later, but it actually proves that it has an over unity. So that means that the amount of energy coming out of it gets more back from it. So he's producing more energy. The thing about it is, even if it doesn't do as that much more effective on the output, the thing can get rid of the whole grid system. So we don't need any grid system anymore. No wires or no power lines. And if you get ice storms down in the south and that, or back east, it wipes out the power lines. You don't need it. All you need is an aerial, and that's the rub. See, because of his tower, his transmission tower, people didn't need to be hooked up. All they had to do was put up an antenna, and they got free energy off from it. That's the way it was transmitted. So that technology has been around for 100 years. You can see, you can put one on your car, or buses and trucks and trains. So you wouldn't really have to have an onboard power source. It'd all be transmitted around the world. It was called, and that was from his Earth battery system. So that technology has been around. There's other technologies that are also there that are Thomas Bearden's stuff. You can do a Google search on Thomas Bearden and find out what he's working on. Bedini, he's been working on a lot of this stuff. We've had, of course, the OrionProject.org, Orion, like the constellation Orion, but it's www.Orion, O-R-I-N, OrionProject.org, and you can go there. But basically, the links are on SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS Disclosure, DISCLOSURE.com, SiriusDisclosure.com. You can go there and you can find out all the things that are happening now, what's going on with the new research and development for new energy technology. There's cold fusion that got debunked by Pons and Fleshman. And, we brought him in, Pons and Fleshman, and they showed it was proven. And of course, then Dr. Eugene Malov, he was a professor at MIT in aerospace engineering, who was murdered. He was working on free energy from the vacuum, and he was murdered at his parents' store, where they were moving the store, and somebody came in and just stabbed and killed him. So a lot of these people are. Then there's Stan Meyer's car that used water instead of gasoline, and the pollution wasn't there. It was the outgases, the residual vapors that come out of the thing was water vapor. And you could put a closed loop system, and you could actually, he went from LA to New York on 11 gallons of water. And he's doing.
Why isn't somebody trying to develop this?
Well, we did. Dr. Greer and the Orion Project tried to get Stan Meyer's technology. Stan Meyer died in the 90s. He had patents pending on all of this, but he left out some important data because he wanted to make sure that the technology come out. But he had deals with the U.S. military, with the government, NASA. They're all doing research on it, but of course everybody said it didn't work. But we had tried to get access to that technology that Dr. Greer just came out and told about today, that he's offering $100,000 for some new inventions to come out that are feasible. But Stan Meyer's stuff, we tried to make a bid on it, but we got outbid. So we lost that technology. It's gone to another corporation, but that corporation's now been threatened as well. So the thing is not to keep it secret. You need to bring it out into the public. You need to get it out so everybody can see it, and that's what Dr. Greer wants to do. He wants to get these technologies out and to have people watching on a live feed on the internet that shows the research going on, and people can see it, sort of like what NASA has, when people are doing spacewalks and that sort of thing. So that's what we like to see done, but we haven't gotten any real money into it because the banks and everything are all controlled by, the military-industrial, petrodollar, financial, energy complex. That's what it's evolved from what Eisenhower talked about, the military-industrial complex. So it's all geared into petroleum and the military.
Which is a lot of money for, a lot of groups of people.
Well, you think, $760 trillion on a global market, commodities exchange, and that's a lot of money. And that's what happens. Some of these inventors that come out, that come out with these technologies, and they've been out before, but they've been bought up and they've been stuck on a shelf. They have been for years. And these interests, these special interests, they can give the inventor $10 million. For them, that's like you writing a check out for $100, or give them a $100 bill. $10 million to the energy corporations, to the petroleum industry. That's nothing for them. That's like a slush fund, a contingency That's like a chump change, if you want to say it. But yeah, it's just it's really sad that that's happened. But then they just take that technology and set it up on a shelf in a warehouse someplace, and then the status quo is maintained, and they maintain the whole market that's geared on that, because that's the problem. If these technologies come out, then the kings of the earth who want to remain kings of the earth would have to give up their power.
You said it.
And that's the problem. That's the real rub, and it goes in all parts of our culture and society. And the truth of the matter, people knew the real truth. It'd be the end of the world as we know it, which is a good thing. We wouldn't have to worry about all these oil spills from offshore wells.
And all these animals that get killed. I still think about the Gulf oil spill, and we're still seeing the effects of that. Well,
not only that, in Fukushima, that nuclear power station, that's still dumping out radioactive water. It's killing the ocean. The reefs are dying off in the ocean. The plankton is what produces most of the oxygen on the Earth. So when the Earth's oceans die, the rest of us die along with it. And the sad part of it is we hadn't had to have this type of energy fuel systems for over 100 years. But just because of people's wanting to maintain a conservative mindset and maintain the status quo and their control of the earth, and we're paying the price. And the climate is changing because of it, and it's
you're right.
It's insane. And we said back in the 90s, we were bringing this out when I was Institute for New Energy. We were saying, hey, we got to bring this technology out, because if we don't get it in place by 2004 and another 10 years, which is 2014, we might get to the point where you're having global temperature runaway. And then people don't realize that during the Bush administration, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Organization, NOAA, national agencies, brought a report out that brought out the whole thing about global warming and the greenhouse effect from all these gases input. But the Bush administration, their managers took the data and rewrote the data and actually made a fraudulent report about it. And it made the headline news here because NOAA's here in Boulder, Colorado. And they said, wait a minute, this isn't true. So they went and called them out on that. It made the news, made about a 15-second blip. And then they finally had to take all the data, and put it back in. And the report was that came out in 2008, in 2007, never got rewritten and really made it official until 2009, after President Obama became president. So, and in that report, NOAA said it would take to the year 3000 for the atmosphere to go back to the way it was before the Industrial Revolution. So, it'd take almost another millennium for it to clean out the air. But in the same sentence, they said that they were really afraid not only of the global warming and the climate change, but they would start melting the ice caps, the polar ice caps, both in Greenland and the Antarctica is mostly sea ice, so that doesn't really affect the water level, but it does affect the ambient temperature of the oceans. But Greenland, when that melts, they figured that the sea will rise about 3 feet. But the major problem is down in Antarctica, when that starts melting, that's almost all that ice is on a continent. And then they're really worried about not so much the sea pack ice, but the land pack ice. When the land pack ice melts, it's going to run off and seek into the oceans, and then it's going to seek equilibrium. And what that means is that the weight is going to be redistributed around the planet. And that's going to cause a weight shift, a redistribution that's going to affect, and this is coming right from the NOAA report, it's going to affect the wobble of the planet. And the wobble, the plus and minus wobble, I think it's 2.5 or 3 degrees, is what does the whole seasonal variations, the 4 seasons that we have. So that's going to change the seasons. And not only that, once you have that wobble shift, the inertia spin from the centripetal force of the planet from that spin, that's going to change. So we'll have a resultant force vectors from the inertia that's going to have to be dissipated. And the only way that expansion is going to be dissipated is going to be through the fault lines in the tectonic plates. So when that starts to happen, there'll be earthquakes, tidal waves, to go along with our seasonal variation and climate change. So we really need to get on the ball now and face the truth and demand the truth from our leaders and put it in front of their faces and say, hey, look, we don't need to frack and bring this oil out. We don't need to go drill it in our neighbors' backyards, whether they like it or not. We don't need to have pipelines. We don't need any of this oil, gas, or coal. These people need to be held accountable, and they need to be forced to take some of their profit and start doing research and development in these alternative new energy systems that will change the planet and for the good. Because if we don't, this is the only boat that everybody's living on. And
right.
So
and they're even in my neck of the woods. I'm here in rural North Carolina, and they want to frack in the county that I live in. And thank goodness people are protesting, not to do that. But you mentioned something earlier that I think hits the nail on the head. You're talking about knocking the kings out of their office. I have a friend that worked for a electrical company that used coal, and their profits, I was told, were $1 million a day. So they don't want to give that up. And wouldn't you say this really has a whole lot to do with disclosure? Because, the technology that the ETs use for their ships and everything,
yeah, right.
If that technology was accessed, then that would also make a lot of people, the big corporations, lose out, wouldn't it?
Well, the extraterrestrials aren't using ExxonMobil Jet A fuel to get here.
Right.
So, and they're not using any combustion technology that would require them to take their fuel along with them. So what their technology taps into the 0-point energy field is omnipresent, and that's the real key to it. That there, in Maxwell's equations, there was a fractional part of the equation that was factored out by Lentz back in the 1800s as a negligible term. But that term is really what is the scalar term that links everything and unifies the whole cosmos. It's the background energy field. The 0-point energy field is the harmonic resonance frequency of the universe. It's the heartbeat. And we can actually tap into that, and it's possible to do that. And the whole 0 point means that at the 0 point, or when 0 degrees Kelvin, I think it is, or about 270 degrees below 0 centigrade, or I think it's around 425 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, when all the molecular motion, in molecules, they're always in motion. They're kind of like vibrating and moving around. But at that temperature, they kind of freeze and stop. And even the electrons stop in orbits around the nucleus of the atom. Now Dr. Weisman and Dr. Cornell here at the University of Colorado got a Nobel Prize in the superatom. And that superatom they got by taking, I think it was boron or barium or boron, I forget, boron, I think. And they cooled it down to close to absolute zero. And they found out when they did, all these atoms condensed and formed a supernucleus. And all the electrons formed a cloud around that supernucleus. And the cloud wasn't so much an orbital cloud, it was just, there. But they found out that even at absolute zero, there was a vibration of the electrons. And that vibration is the 0-point field that is omnipresent throughout the cosmos. So all we have to do is be able to tap into that, as Tesla showed that it was possible. We actually think Tesla was able to tap into the 0-point field. And there's enough free energy to power the whole planet. And that's the rub, you see, because that would do away with our whole economic system. The whole culture of the planet would be changed. Which is a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
It is a good thing.
Well, people, when we get, the Orion Project wants to get enough funding to do it and bring out one of these devices. They know the principle. They have working models of it, but they need to get people to fund their research and develop campus. And once they do that and get one of these devices out, then we don't care if China or somebody, does knockoffs, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Takes it over.
Well,
so because, and then we want to go into India, into China, into South America, countries where people are in poverty, and just give them one of these devices, set them up in their village, and they'll have enough energy to, get clean water, irrigate. They'll be able to get on the internet, and people will be able to learn, and it'll change the way we live. They won't have to put up infrastructure like we've got, a grid system.
I would love for all human beings to have those basic needs met, like electricity, to have power and to have food and just to be able to live in a humane way. That would be so wonderful.
That's the intent.
Well, I know that you have written, you are a co-author of a book, and I want you to talk a little bit about that. We only have about 10 minutes left, but you have a conference coming up.
Right.
You want to tell us a little bit about that and who all's going to be there?
Well, the book's called Paths to Contact, True Stories from the Contact Underground. It's on Amazon for people who want to know about it. I'm one of the co-authors. There's about 12 co-authors there. Grant Haygood's one of the co-authors, and Costa Matreas is, and Dr. Joe Berg. Jeff Becker is the editor of it. So all of us are having a conference in Roswell on the 25th to the 27th. It's open to the public. You can go to passtocontact.org and you can find out about it there. It's the Stardust Conference. So you can find out on the internet about it. And I don't know who's all going to be in attendance. I know that a lot of
I think there's 11 speakers, but I did post that on my Skywatchers radio show Facebook page. I put a link to Stardust and to Sirius and everything that we've talked about, basically, so they can go there if they want to, find one place to get all the links. But it sounds very exciting. So you're going to be speaking, right?
Yeah, I'll be speaking there on the 25th, but I won't be there for the whole conference because Dr. Greer invited me to his CE5 training outside of Tucson on the 27th, so I'm going to have to fly back to Denver and fly back there. I wanted to do both, but they're kind of overlap each other, so I'm going to try to do both as much as I can because it's really important for the planet. And I got to say that one of the first training we did in '93, we brought in a mothership, and it was about 3 football fields across, and scout ships were around too. But they gave us a light signal, and I saw the signal, and it was a sideways 8. I said, oh, they're flying, that thing's doing a lazy 8. I couldn't believe it. And then it did 2 horizontal lines, one over the other, and a vertical line. And I thought, wow, that's kind of strange that they would do that kind of a light signal, about 700 feet up in the air over the top of us. And it wasn't until I wrote down my report and drew out those maneuvers that light did to see that it was actually equation, and the equation was infinity equals 1. In other words, the universe equals 1, and we're all together. And that's their whole operating principle, the extraterrestrials. So there is no duality in the universe. It's all a matter of concept. It's all a matter of consciousness. No plus or minus, no up and down. It's all basically a different position on a graph, on a 3-axle graph from the point of origin.
That is a beautiful message. I'd never heard that before. I really appreciate you sharing that.
That's it. There isn't any duality, and that's the way they operate on. So, the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning, the end. I am that I am. I was, I am, and I will be. Past, present, and future. That was their message, and the proof of that given, the universal given, was that they were there to give it to us. And they wouldn't have been there if they didn't believe it or use it.
It's an amazing message for a trying time, in the year 2014. I just want to say it has been a pleasure having you on my show, Ricky. I wish you continued success with all the projects that you're working in, and I hope you'll keep us updated about things that are going on.
Well, I will. Anytime you want, let me know, and I'll be glad to tell you, or personally, or back to your show, or whatever you want. There's a lot there that I've been involved in the last 20 years, and we need to get the message out, and we need people to really do the science. I don't expect people to believe what I say. I ask them to do the science and find out for yourself, because experience is the best teacher, and then pass it along. And that's what we need to do. We need to get people to understand the reality of the universe and the truth that's out there, and not a lot of this subculture mythology and the whole duality, good versus evil thing, because there isn't any. We're all together. We're all one. One universe, one people. That's the CSETI motto. And we've seen that play out in the field. They're all working together, not only the extraterrestrials, but the angelic realm, our spirit guides, our ancestors, our parents and grandparents, our family that's crossed over the other side, all the Vedic avatar, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, all of them. They're all working together on this transformation that's happening. And that's the main key message that's going on. The ascension isn't for one person or one group of people, it's for the whole earth. And that's where we're at. We want the earth to be the gem that she is, to continue sustainable, and for peace to be on the planet. And it's possible now, today.
And peace out to everyone on this Earth Day in 2014. Thank you, Ricky Butterfass. Thank you to all our listeners for Skywatchers Radio Show. I hope you have a great evening, and tune in next week with our guest, Sherry Wild, the author of Forgotten Promises. Thank you for joining in.
You have been listening to Skywatchers with Debra Jayne East. Contact us, skywatchersfacebook.com or Alien Chronicles for more information. This is Rachel Love, founder of Starseed Spiritual Alliance, reminding you that you are not alone in this universe. Join us on the web, starseedspiritual.us, or on Facebook. This is Rachel Love reminding you to awaken your gifts. Open your eyes.